Imagine building a fortress within, a citadel of calm where your deepest truths reside, untouched by the chaos outside. This isn't isolation, it's sovereignty. The ancient Stoics didn't just preach restraint, they lived it, crafting lives of unshakable peace by guarding what mattered most. Today, we'll uncover 8 pillars of silence that can transform how you navigate a world obsessed with exposure. These aren't rules, they're revelations. Lessons from philosophers who understood that some truths lose their power when spoken aloud. Whether you're 30 or 70, these shields will help you reclaim your narrative. Let's begin. Picture this. You're handed a novel, but instead of diving into its chapters, someone flips to the last page, scans the publication date, and declares they've understood the story. This is how society treats age, reducing the epic of a human life to a digits on a birth certificate. The ancient Stoics saw time not as a ledger of years, but as raw material for crafting meaning. Marcus Aurelius, ruling Rome in his 50s, wrote in his private meditations, "You could live life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." Not a morbid threat, but a liberation, an invitation to measure life by vitality, not vintage. We live in a world obsessed with timelines. Act your age, they say. But when did acting your age ever build cathedrals, write symphonies, or launch revolutions? Take Satchel Paige, the baseball legend who debuted in the major leagues at 42, an age when peers retired, and pitched a shutout game at 59. Or Julia Hurricane Hawkins, who took up competitive sprinting at 100 and shattered world records. These weren't exceptions to the timeline. They rewrote it entirely. The danger of disclosing your age isn't about vanity, it's about veto power. Once others know your years, they subconsciously slot you into their mental filing cabinets. Too old to start over, too young to lead, should have settled by now. These aren't judgments, they're projections. Seneca saw this clearly. Life is long if you know how to use it, but society, he observed, wastes years in postponing life. By guarding your age, you become a chronological enigma, free from the scripts others try to hand you. Consider the Japanese concept of ikigai, the reason you wake up each morning. In Okinawa, a region famed for centenarians, elders rarely discuss age. They speak of their ikigai, the 98-year-old fisherman hauling nets, the 1 to 2-year-old midwife still delivering babies. Their secret: they're too busy living to count years. Modern neuroscience backs this ethos. Studies show those who view aging as a continuum of growth, not decline, maintain sharper cognition and vitality. When Harvard researchers told subjects they were younger based on fake biomarkers, their grip strength, posture, and memory improved overnight. Your mind believes what you feed it. Disclose your age, and you risk feeding others' biases, and worse, your own. The Stoic antidote: treat age like a compass, not a cage. When asked, "How old are you?" channel the spirit of Cato the Elder, who at 80 began studying Greek to debate philosophers. His answer: "I am as old as my curiosity." Or borrow from Georgia O'Keeffe, painting desert skulls in her 90s. "I've been absolutely terrified every moment of my life, and never let it keep me from doing a single thing." In the digital age, privacy is rebellion. Algorithms categorize us by birth years. Marketers target over 50 discounts. Employers screen resumes by graduation dates. By keeping your age unlisted, you force the world to engage with your now, your ideas, energy, presence. As Epictetus advised, Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Your age isn't an expiration date. It's the patina on a bronze sculpture. Evidence of weathering, yes, but also of enduring. Guard it not because you're ashamed, but because some mysteries deepen their power in silence. Let them wonder, is she 45 or 65? While they're guessing, you'll be too busy outliving their expectations to care. Imagine wealth not as gold in a vault, but as wind, an unseen force that bends trees, drives ships, and whispers through cracks in stone. You don't see the wind, you see what it does. The Stoics grasp this paradox. True wealth isn't what glitters in your hand, but what hums quietly in your spirit. Seneca, one of Rome's richest men, slept on a hard bed and ate stale bread to remind himself, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. He understood that money, when flaunted, becomes a leash. When guarded, it becomes wings. History brims with the ghosts who mastered this invisible currency. Take Crates of Thebes, the philosopher who inherited a fortune, then threw it into the sea, declaring, I am sinking my illusions to float in truth. Or John D. Rockefeller, who, as the world's first billionaire, printed his own motto on dimes. The secret to happiness is to own nothing and enjoy everything. These weren't contradictions, they were blueprints. Wealth, they knew, is most potent when divorced from spectacle. Yet we live in an age of financial exhibitionism. Social media feeds curate lifestyles like museum exhibits, gold watches artfully draped on steering wheels, vacations framed as gratitude journals. But every public display of wealth invites a silent transaction, envy masquerading as admiration, opportunists mistaking generosity for entitlement. Researchers at Cornell found that people perceived as wealthy are 37% more likely to be targeted for scams and 52% more likely to face relationship conflicts rooted in financial assumptions. When you monetize your life, you become a product, priced, reviewed, and haggled over. The Stoic alternative? Treat money like oxygen, essential, invisible, and never wasted. Consider the Japanese concept of mottainai, a term for regret over waste. It's why the CEO of Uniqlo wears recycled sweaters, and why Warren Buffett lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Their power lies not in what they spend, but in what they don't. Epictetus, born enslaved, framed it bluntly. Wealth consists not in having possessions, but in having few wants. But here's the alchemy. Financial privacy isn't just about hiding numbers. It's about reclaiming narrative. When you mute the noise of enough, you hear life's subtler melodies. The widow who volunteers at food banks, her inheritance unknown even to the homeless she feeds. The entrepreneur who quietly funds scholarships under a pseudonym, finding joy in anonymous impact. These are modern Stoics, trading validation for sovereignty. Society will always peddle myths that debt is shameful, that luxury equals success, that net worth mirrors self-worth. Break the mirror. Your financial life should be a sonnet written in vanishing ink, deeply felt, fiercely protected, and meaningful, precisely because it can't be scanned or scored. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his midnight journals, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let your wealth be a hue no one else can name, a color that exists only in the quiet between your ambitions and your peace. Guard your coffers, not out of fear, but because some mysteries are too sacred to monetize. Let them wonder how you travel so lightly through a world heavy with the want. While they're dissecting your choices, you'll be too busy living by Seneca's creed. What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears, or laughter, or silent, unaccountable grace. A family is not a spreadsheet of shared genes, but a living ecosystem. Roots tangled underground, branches weathering separate storms, yet drawing strength from the same dark soil. The Stoics knew this intimately. When Marcus Aurelius discovered his mother's affair with Emperor Hadrian, he didn't denounce her in the Sonnet or publish scrolls of outrage. He protected the scandal like a sealed letter, understanding that airing familial fractures invites strangers to stomp through your garden, trampling what might still grow. Modern culture conflates transparency with virtue, urging us to share struggles and normalize dysfunction. But not all wounds need oxygen. Consider the Japanese principle of uchisoto, the sacred line between inside, family, and outside, the world. In Okinawan villages, elders still resolve conflicts behind paper-thin walls, voices hushed but resolve thunderous. They know to broadcast strife is to graft weeds into your lineage. A 2023 Yale study found that families who kept disputes private reported 68% higher relational satisfaction, not because they ignored problems, but because they honored the process of healing over the spectacle of confession. The danger isn't in having disagreements, it's in outsourcing them. When you vent about a sibling's betrayal or a parent's flaws to acquaintances, you reduce complex bonds to gossip fodder. The Stoic lawyer Cicero, who lost his daughter to childbirth, wrote, "Grief shared is grief halved, but dignity lost is irreplaceable." He burned letters detailing family quarrels, preserving their sanctity. Similarly, Eleanor Roosevelt hosted press conferences while her husband's infidelity simmered in silence, not out of shame, but to deny outsiders the power to define her marriage. This isn't suppression, it's stewardship. Think of family secrets as heirloom seeds. Some require darkness to germinate. By shielding your kin's imperfections, you allow them to evolve beyond others' snap judgments. A child who overhears their parent mocked at dinner parties internalizes that caricature. A spouse discussed as difficult becomes a villain in someone else's story. Epictetus, who saw families torn apart by Roman gossip mills, offered a compass. We cannot choose our relatives, but we can choose what we amplify. Protect your tribe's narrative like a scribe guarding sacred texts. Let the world see the fruit of your bonds, the loyalty, the inside jokes, the unspoken trust, while keeping the roots veiled. After all, the deepest forests thrive not because we dissect their soil, but because we honor their mystery. Your body speaks in riddles, a knotted language of pulses, fevers, and fleeting aches. The Stoics revered it not as a temple, but as a cipher, its codes decipherable only through silent dialogue between flesh and will. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire from a bed of chronic pain, wrote in his private journals, "You own your mind, not your body's storms." He didn't hide his ailments out of shame, but to deny them center stage in his life's theater. Ancient healers understood this intimacy. Hippocrates' disciples swore oaths to guard patients' secrets as if carved into temple walls. When the Roman physician Galen treated gladiators, he encrypted their wounds in symbols, knowing that vulnerability broadcasted becomes a weapon. Modern studies echo this wisdom. Patients who control health disclosures report 40% higher resilience during recovery. Johns Hopkins, 2021. Like a locked diary, privacy transforms the body from a spectacle into a sovereign text. Yet today, we dissect our health online, posting lab results like concert tickets, crowdsourcing diagnoses from strangers. What begins as solidarity often morphs into a circus of hot takes. The Stoic farmer-philosopher Musonius Rufus rebuked this. To parade suffering is to let it conquer you twice. Consider FDR, who reframed a nation's despair while hiding paralyzed legs behind podiums. His power stemmed not from the body he displayed, but the presence he radiated. Disclosure risks more than pity. It invites colonization. Share a diagnosis, and suddenly, your aunt becomes an essential oil shaman, your co-worker, a WebMD warrior. Ancient ninjas, shinobi, mastered this dance, concealing injuries to protect their agency. Health, they knew, is strategy. To reveal weakness is to arm adversaries, both human and psychological. This isn't dishonesty, it's discernment. Epictetus, born lame yet unbroken, taught, lameness is an impediment to the leg, not the soul. Guarding your health isn't denial, it's defiance. A rebellion against the notion that your worth fluctuates with the cholesterol levels or scan results. Let doctors decode your cipher, but let the world see only what you choose. Not a patient, but a person, unbound, undimmed, writing your story in ink that outlives the body's ephemeral script. Intimacy is a melody hummed in the dark, a composition felt in the pulse beneath skin, not the applause of an audience. The Stoics revered love not as a spectacle, but as a silent covenant. Consider John and Abigail Adams, whose letters, sealed with wax and secrecy, burned with revolution and tenderness. They wrote of politics and passion in codes only they could decipher, understanding that love, like fire, dims when exposed to too much air. Seneca, who counseled Nero, yet distrusted his court's theatrics, warned, to broadcast affection is to dilute its essence. Ancient Greeks whisper of anakalipma, the sacred veil brides wore, not to obscure beauty, but to guard the sanctity of what's unveiled. Modern psychology echoes this. Couples who shield their most vulnerable exchanges report 34% deeper trust. Journal of Social Psychology, 2022. Intimacy, at its core, is a dialect spoken in glances, not headlines. Yet today, we curate relationships like museum exhibits, posting stolen kisses, dissecting fights in group chats. The Japanese concept of ma, the space between notes that gives music meaning, reminds us, what's unshared often holds the resonance. Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera painted their stormy love in surreal hues, but their diaries, locked for decades, raw and unedited. To expose every fracture is to deny the art of repair. Epictetus, who praised discipline over desire, taught, what's sacred should be sheltered, not displayed. Share your joys and you risk envy. Air your strife and you invite voyeurs. Like the Celtic love knots with no beginning or end, true connection thrives in continuity, not commentary. Guard your unwritten sonnet. Let it be a symphony only two souls can conduct, its power lying not in volume, but in the weight of every unspoken rest. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Let intimacy be the hue that lingers in your quietest hours, a pigment no outsider can name or claim. True charity is a shadow that nourishes without ever stepping into the light, a quiet force that sustains life without demanding tribute. The Stoics revered giving as the purest expression of virtue, one that withers under the gaze of applause. Seneca, who funneled fortunes into Rome's slums anonymously, cautioned, "A benefit's worth fades when paraded, its essence lies in the unseen hand." Consider the tale of crates of Thebes, who abandoned vast wealth to wander Athens, slipping gold into the sandals of sleeping beggars. He understood that generosity, when anonymous, becomes a dialogue with the divine, a pact between giver and conscience, untainted by ego. Centuries later, the Jewish tradition of tzedakah elevated this ideal. The highest form of giving is when neither donor nor recipient knows the other's name, preserving dignity on both sides. Modernity, with its cult of visibility, often mistakes charity for theater, a staged act of hashtags and self-congratulation. But like a river that dries when its source is overexposed, the soul of giving evaporates under scrutiny. Social media's glare transforms compassion into currency, where every donation becomes a performance. The Japanese practice of zoto, anonymous gift giving, rebels against this. A present left on a doorstep at midnight carries more magic than any viral fundraiser. The danger of public charity lies not in the act, but in its aftertaste. Expectations of gratitude poison the well, reducing selflessness to transaction. Epictetus framed it sharply. If you gave, why boast? You've already been paid in the giving. To be a ghost philanthropist is to embrace the paradox. Your greatest impact lives in what isn't etched with your name. It's the scholarship fund that whispers possibilities to a child, the meal left on a stranger's stoop, the debt erased without fanfare. These are Stoic acts, rooted not in pity but in kinship. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Let your charity stain your spirit with the quiet ink of integrity, leaving the world lighter, brighter, and none the wiser. Honor is a tree that grows inward, its roots coiled around the soul, its branches etched not in gold leaf, but in the quiet calculus of integrity. The Stoics understood that true honor, like a mountain spring, loses its purity when channeled into public fountains. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire yet scribbled his wisdom in private journals, never carved his deeds into monuments. "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be," he wrote. "Be one." History's most honorable figures mastered this art of invisible virtue. Take Cato the Younger, who swallowed his pride to beg for his nephew's life during Caesar's purge, then drank hemlock rather than bend his principles. His contemporaries called him stubborn. Posterity named him incorruptible. Or the samurai Miyamoto Musashi, who vanished into a cave to write the Book of Five Rings, a manifesto on mastery, after winning 61 duels. His legacy wasn't in the fights he won, but in the philosophy he buried like a seed for future warriors. Modern culture conflates honor with reputation, a fragile currency traded in likes and testimonials. But the Stoic ideal is closer to the Japanese concept of mottainai, a reverence for intrinsic value. Like the anonymous donors who rebuilt Hiroshima's temples after the atomic blast, or the nurse who works double shifts without updating her LinkedIn. Their honor lives in the unlit spaces between action and ego, where no one is watching but their own conscience. To speak of honor is to risk embalming it. Seneca warned, "A benefit proclaimed is a benefit surrendered." When you brandish achievements like medals, you invite dissection. Was it luck, ambition, a calculated play? True honor thrives in ambiguity, like the sculptor Phidias, who hid his face in the shield of Athena's statue at the Parthenon, a signature visible only to the gods. Guarding your honor isn't modesty, it's alchemy. By letting deeds breathe in silence, they ferment into something timeless. The world will clamor for your resume, your titles, your proofs of worth. Resist. Let your life be a folk tale others piece together from fragments. The kindness you didn't post, the injustice you challenged off camera, the promises kept when no one stood witness. As Epictetus, born in chains, taught, don't live by your reputation, but by your inner compass. Honor, when caged in silence, becomes untouchable. A trophy locked not in glass cases, but in the marrow of who you are. Resentments are phantom limbs, ghosts of past slights that ache long after the injury has healed. The Stoics saw clinging to these wounds as a form of self-enslavement, a refusal to unlock the chains others no longer hold. Marcus Aurelius, betrayed by his closest generals, wrote in the stillness of night, "The best revenge is to not be like your enemy." He understood that nursing grudges is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. Ancient healers treated emotional scars with silence. The Greek physician Asclepius prescribed dream therapy in sealed sanctuaries, where patients' grievances dissolved in sacred isolation. Similarly, samurai practiced kage no michi, the way of shadows, ritually burning letters of betrayal to free their minds for battle. Modern neuroscience mirrors this. Harboring anger activates stress hormones that corrode focus and creativity, turning the mind into a courtroom where past trials never adjourn. Yet we often mistake resentment for justice, replaying slides like a dirge on loop. Seneca, exiled by Emperor Claudius, refused to vilify him. To be wronged is nothing unless you continue to remember it. His liberation came not from pardoning the act, but from erasing its hold. Consider Eleanor Roosevelt, who channeled private betrayals into public advocacy, transforming bitterness into bedrock. The Stoic art lies in alchemizing pain, not preserving it. Like the Navajo weavers who intentionally knot flaws into rugs to release trapped spirits, we must weave our wounds into wisdom. Epictetus, enslaved and crippled, taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them." Each slight is a chisel. You decide whether it sculpts you into something brittle or beautiful. Letting go isn't forgiveness, it's emancipation. Burn the ledger of debts, bury the trial transcripts. As rust devours iron, so resentment consumes the vessel that carries it. Your peace is not a treaty others sign, it's a sovereign decree. The vanishing wound leaves no scar, only the quiet strength of a storm that passed through you, not over you. The Stoics didn't hide their light, they simply refused to let others dim it. Your silence isn't a retreat, it's a revolution, a reclamation. And as you walk this path, remember, the world will keep asking for your secrets. Let your life be the answer. If this journey into quiet strength resonated with you, join the unspoken rebellion. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Let's build a community that values depth over decibels. Drop A in the comments if you're ready to guard your sovereignty or share your own Stoic insight. Every like is a ripple in the noise. Every share passes the torch. Until next time, keep your fire banked and your peace unbroken.